Indian courts are actually putting a literal price tag on unpaid housework, calculating salaries for homemakers down to the exact rupee. But there's a massive, pretty controversial catch. It's only being awarded after they die. Welcome to Zenith Global News.
Okay, so in this explainer, we're going to unpack a massive debate that's currently shaking things up in India. Basically, a new political party with backing from a prominent MP is straight up promising salaries to housewives. The proponents, well, they argue that this creates a basic income and grants women real autonomy, which would fundamentally shift how we value household chores.
To really get a grip on this, we need to look at the unpaid labor divide, and specifically the global and national disparities at play here. Let's zoom out for a second. Globally, the International Labor Organization reports that women spend on average 3 times more minutes per day on unpaid care work than men do. To put that into perspective, that's an average of 265 minutes for women versus a mere 83 for men. It's kind of this universal reality, right? Women doing the heavy lifting behind closed doors. Now, in India, that gap widens dramatically. Indian women are spending a staggering 297 minutes daily doing domestic chores, and the men, just 31 minutes. Basically, 4/5 of Indian women are engaged in these unpaid chores, compared to just a quarter of men. And that heavy lifting, it falls squarely on the shoulders of India's 160 million homemakers. These are women fetching water, managing the finances, and providing constant care. We're talking about full-time, demanding jobs that the formal economy completely ignores. Which brings us directly to how we classify this. Is housework actually forced labor? Let's check out the scholarly perspective. Legal scholar Gautam Bhatia takes a pretty uncompromising stance here. He argues that this mandatory unpaid housework effectively functions as forced labor. Think about it. When society demands this intense work exclusively from one gender with zero financial return, the underlying structural dynamics fundamentally mirror forced labor. Along those same lines, research scholar Arpan Tulsian emphasizes the absolute critical need for society to finally recognize the true value of this domestic work. It's not just about a pat on the back, it's about formal economic recognition of the bedrock that the rest of the paid economy actually relies on. This sets the stage for a fascinating legal reality, valuing life after death, and a half-century of legal precedent. Now, this is where things get intensely ironic. Under an Indian road transport law, there is actually a legal framework that monetizes a woman's unpaid work, but only after she has died in an accident. The compensation is then awarded strictly to her surviving dependents. Professor Prabha Kodaswaran actually reviewed roughly 200 cases to trace this legal precedent, and it's a wild timeline. Back in 1966, a court incredibly ruled that a wife's imagined salary was just equal to what it cost her husband to maintain her, so they awarded zero compensation. Unbelievable, right? But then between 1968 and 2021, the courts completely shifted gears and firmly established the principle of valuing this unpaid work. Fast forward to a much more recent ruling this past December. A court officially fixed a 33-year-old deceased homemaker's notional salary at 5,000 rupees a month, ultimately awarding a massive 1.7 million rupees to her family. So, how do they come up with these numbers? Let's break down the math of domestic work and see how they calculate this notional salary. First up, the courts look at opportunity cost. Essentially, they're calculating the potential income a woman actively gives up when she makes the decision to work at home instead of participating in the formal, paid workforce. It's not guesswork either. Judges calculate this salary methodically. They factor in things like minimum wages for skilled or unskilled labor, the deceased woman's educational qualifications, her age, whether she had kids, and they even adjust the final numbers to keep pace with inflation. It's a highly detailed process. And the Supreme Court even scales this compensation by age. For example, women aged 34 to 59 get higher amounts, sometimes up to 9,000 rupees a month, because of heavy active childcare responsibilities. For older women with decreased childcare duties, that notional salary actually drops. But in one particularly progressive judgment, the court sort of threw out all that complex math and simply viewed marriage as an equal economic partnership. In that specific ruling, the judge determined the homemaker's salary should rightfully just be fixed at exactly half of her husband's salary. Pretty groundbreaking, right? Now, let's look at impacting female labor participation and moving this whole concept from death back to life. Professor Kotiswaran asks the ultimate glaring question here. If we can quantify and compensate this unpaid labor in death, why on earth are we not paying women these wages in life? Why does this economic value only seem to matter during a tragedy?
Legal experts believe that leaning into these past accident judgments could trigger massive changes in constitutional and family laws. Practically speaking, formally paying wages to women doing unpaid work at home could actively boost India's currently declining female labor participation rate. It could literally be a real game changer.
Which leads us to ask, are we on the brink of a broader wage movement? Let's look at how the political conversation is shifting today. As I mentioned earlier, with political promises of housewife salaries hitting the mainstream, scholars are urging us to look beyond just pushing women into traditional 9-to-5 jobs. Professor Kotiswaran points out that organizations like UN Women are sometimes way too focused on paid work and completely miss the immense, undeniable economic value of the labor performed within marriage itself. But let's be real for a second. Where does the money actually come from? Are we talking about direct government cash transfers, state subsidies, or maybe leaning into a universal basic income framework? And we have to ask the hard questions. Should family laws change? Should men and transgender women be remunerated too? And critically, could formal salaries inadvertently trap women further in traditional roles? We absolutely must have a sustained conversation about the unintended consequences before making this a reality. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay informed, stay aware, stay ahead. Only on Zenith Global News.